What's up, you guys, and welcome back to the Televised podcast. My name is Anna, and today we're gonna kind of do like a 3 shows and 3 movies that I watched in 2020 that I didn't really talk about or like do reviews of on the podcast throughout the year. So I just kind of wanted to highlight a couple of shows and a couple of movies that I watched and I really enjoyed this year and I think are worth a lot of people's time, and I think maybe not necessarily like flew under the radar, but I just wanted to talk about them in case, any of you haven't seen them yet. I hope that I can give you a new show to binge going into the new year. I know a lot of people are still on break from school, which is really cool. So if you have some time, here are some recommendations of things to watch, things that I really enjoyed. I do want to say I'm not going to make this episode super duper long. I kind of just wanted to do like a little quick recommendations video. I do have a plan to do a full-fledged Wonder Woman 1984 review. I'm gonna watch it a couple more times. I saw it in the theaters the day after Christmas, and I really, really, really liked it. And some of the discourse around it is kind of not making me mad, but it's frustrating that people don't understand the movie. I think maybe this seems to be a theme with me, like liking movies that people just don't seem to get. Maybe it's a me problem, maybe, but I do want to talk about that movie because I really did enjoy it, and I think it's absolutely worth your time if you have HBO Max. Even if you don't, just get the free trial and give it a shot. If you liked the first one, I thought this one was really, really good. And so I do have plans to do a full-fledged Wonder Woman 1984 review, but like I said, I do want to watch it a couple more times, kind of get a really good feel for the movie and kind of make sure that I caught everything that I wanted to catch and, just do the movie kind of justice. But I know that I've had people reach out and say, hey, are you gonna do a Wonder Woman 1984 review? And yeah, I am. I don't know if it'll be next week, maybe the week after. I will try to do next week because I'm still off from school, so I will try to just get it in maybe next week, do an episode a week early, just so that it's more relevant, I guess. But so yeah, I'll do that, do a nice little Wonder Woman 1984 review. But these shows I'm going to talk about, like I said, are shows that I watched in 2020 that I loved and that I just didn't really talk about on the podcast. I think I'd mentioned them a couple times and I'd gotten questions about some of these things before, whether I liked them, whether I didn't like them, if I even watched them at all, if I had seen certain movies. So like I said, I just kind of wanted to talk about some of the things that I enjoyed, some of the media that I enjoyed in 2020 that I thought was absolutely it just kind of helped to make the year a little bit easier. You know what I mean? So with that being said, I want to first, I think I'm going to go show movie. Or maybe not. We'll see. But the first thing that I definitely want to talk about, kind of on the same note of like making this year a little bit easier, I watched Station 19 this year. It's a show that is airing on ABC currently, so it's not over by any means, but I binge watched, first I actually binge watched season 3 because it was the only one on Hulu at the time, and then I watched 1 and 2 as well because they were added to Hulu. So, but in April was when I binge watched season 3 of the show, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that this show is absolutely worth your time if you like first of all, if you like Grey's Anatomy, I think you'll like this show. The first season definitely feels more like Grey's Anatomy than the later seasons, which is a good thing to me. It's a good thing to me that they changed how they did the show, because I think that, especially watching that first season, I'm like, geez, this just feels like they copy and pasted Grey's Anatomy's formula, onto and just like put it onto this show. Like you have the main character, Andy Herrera, who is it's a show about firefighters. It's a show about firefighters based in Seattle. They work really closely with the doctors at Grey Sloan. So there's a lot of like mini crossovers and stuff that's really fun. But in the first season, they had Andy Herrera kind of like do these narrations, kind of like Meredith Grey does. And I just didn't like it all that much. I mean, I liked the first season, but I didn't like how the show didn't feel like it had its own identity. Moving on to like season 3, which again is the one that I watched in April and I just really loved. I feel like the show really has its own identity. They do a lot of like flashbacks in season 3. Season 3 was kind of like a flashback heavy season, but I thought that formula worked really well because it helped you to get to know the characters and it helped you to have context about what is actually going on in the present. Which I thought was really smart because sometimes flashbacks can be so annoying. Like, I think that's the most annoying part about Arrow for me is all of those flashbacks because I just get caught up in wanting to know what's going on, you know, currently in the present. But I think for Station 19, it did end up working really, really well to have those flashbacks because then, you know, the audience has this sense of dramatic irony where you know so much about these characters, but the characters don't necessarily know that much about each other. So I thought it worked really, really well. And April was a hard time. I think obviously for everybody, you know, March, we were all kind of like, we don't know what's going to happen. But April, it definitely was like, okay, the future is grim. For the foreseeable future, it is grim. And I think we were all kind of at that point settling into a really long quarantine, or at least accepting that it was going to be a really long quarantine. And also, like, for me, you know, school was permanently, okay, we're going to go back to fully online, like, you're going to be at home, and that was it. Like, so April was tough. April was tough to deal with as a human being, in this country and on this planet. And so for Station 19, for while I was watching it, there were moments in the show that legitimately like made me bawl my eyes out, and I think I needed it. You know, it was kind of like cathartic to watch the show and to have that moment of like, I'm crying about what's happening on the show. I'm crying about this character, but it just feels good to get that like weight off of your chest. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a person who, maybe I should cry more often, but I'm not a person who will like just kind of like lay in bed and cry about things that are happening in my life. I just don't really do that. I mean, I do, but not as often as I probably should. So like in April, it was nice to have like this show that would make me cry and make me like release all of this emotion that I had built up, you know, because of March and because of everything that was going on, you know, in the beginning of the year. And that really, it was something that was really helpful for me, I think. The show also has just great characters. I mean, they're firefighters, so it's definitely found family trope, you know, because they all live together. So there's just so much of that found family aspect of the show, and that's one of my favorite tropes is found family. And I think that's a lot of other like queer people's favorite tropes is found family. And also speaking of queer people, there's actually 3 at this point, not in the earlier seasons, there's only 2, but during season 4, which is the season that is actually currently airing on ABC. They're on a break right now for the holidays. But I think they said new episodes in like February or something. I'm not quite sure. But there are 3 series regular characters who are LGBT or who are queer, 2 bisexual women and a gay man. And each of those characters are so well developed, so well rounded, so cool and so great. And I love all of those characters, and there's such good representation. And I think especially, you know, for me, I unfortunately don't see a lot of gay man representation on television. Like, it seems to be that like queer women are more prominently featured. So I think it's really cool. His name is Travis Montgomery. He's such a great character. He's incredible. His storyline right now is really interesting. And he's always had kind of these really intriguing storylines. And the whole team is such a great family and such a great team, and they're also supportive of each other. And it's just such it's simultaneously a feel-good show while also being a show that will make you cry. It's like Grey's Anatomy in that way. So I really enjoy it, though, and I think that it's absolutely worth a watch if you haven't checked it out. It's on Hulu in the US. I don't know where it streams anywhere else, but it's an ABC show, so you can catch it Thursday nights on ABC. And I meant to mention at the beginning of this episode, or maybe I did, I can't remember. I just want to say it again, just in case I forgot to mention it. I don't really want to spoil or like talk about spoilers in this episode about the things that I'm talking about, just because this episode is kind of meant for me to like encourage people to watch these things if they haven't seen them. And I'm gonna talk about kind of like, you know, things that I obviously really like about these things, or, you know, whatever, like I just did about Station 19, but I just don't want to spoil it for anyone, you know? I don't want to do like major spoilers in this episode. Like I said, just because I kind of want people to watch them and not listen to this beforehand and kind of know exactly what's going on. And that's extremely relevant for one of these shows I'm going to talk about. The other ones are kind of like, it's not that bad if you know about some of the like spoilers that happen. Like, you know, in Station 19, I'm sure a lot of you are aware, if you've never even seen the show, but if you're aware of the show, Maya Bishop from Station 19 and Karina DeLuca from Grey's Anatomy are actually a couple, and so they're like a major part of the show that I really like and I really adore. So that's not necessarily like a huge, you know, groundbreaking, earth-shattering spoiler that's gonna like deter somebody from watching, but I'm not gonna go into like intricate details about each of these things, just because I kind of want this to be like a little like platter of things that you can watch, but I'm not gonna totally like spoil everything and talk about every moment of it, you know? So I hope that's okay. One thing though about Station 19 that I do kind of want to preface is that in season 3, Maya and Karina have a bit of a storyline that is a little bit of a really tired trope. And it was really upsetting to me when because I ended up watching it live as it was airing, because I was caught up, and then I watched like the last 2 or 3 episodes live because they were finishing up their season in April, and I was really upset by what happened on the show. I just kind of want to give like a forewarning. It's a really awful bisexual stereotype that they put onto Maya, and it just sucked. It just sucked really bad, and it kind of felt like they wrapped it up a little bit too quickly for my liking, but they actually are still like kind of mentioning it in this current season, so I don't know. That was one thing that I did have an issue with, so I do want to preface that it's not, Maya and Karina are not like perfect 100% great representation, just because of that kind of tired trope that was used on the show. But like I said, I really like this show. I think it's absolutely worth a watch. For me personally, I actually can't watch Grey's Anatomy because I'm too squeamish. I just can't handle it. I can't handle like the surgery, the wounds, the blood, everything. I can't do it. But for this show, for Station 19, it's actually not as gory as Grey's Anatomy is, which I really appreciate. I mean, it does have its moments because they are firefighters and they're first responders, and they're, you know, helping people who are injured or who are hurt or who are burnt or whatever, you know. So it's definitely, there's some moments where I do have to kind of like cover my eyes, but I like this show because it feels like, okay, I'm kind of in on the Grey's Anatomy like club, because so many people watch Grey's Anatomy, but I think Station 19 is definitely worth a watch, definitely a great show. Actually, the current season that is airing, season 4, is actually they have COVID like in the world of their canon, you know, like, which it would kind of be remiss if you made a hospital or first responder show and you didn't have COVID in your show. But it's interesting to watch as they deal with it, and it's cool because the show definitely tackles a lot of kind of like social justice issues and like things that are very pressing and very important, which I really like. And it's cool because it's all very uplifted by the diverse cast that they have, diverse cast of characters that they have. Like, you know, it's really cool. And I genuinely really appreciate how topical the show feels and how it definitely handles everything with kind of like a delicate hand, you know. It's not like they know that they're treading kind of delicate territory. Not to say that doing social issue storylines is like hard or whatever, but you don't want to like do it wrong, you know. So it definitely feels like they put a lot of care into covering some of the topics that they do. Actually, the most recent mid-season finale for season 4 had a storyline about police brutality and mistreatment of, specifically in the episode, Black women by police, and also then even members of the fire squad mistreatment by the police upon them, even though they're first responders as well. And it was a really good episode. Like it really, I think it felt, you know, obviously really important after this year and everything, but it was just really good. And I think that they do a really good job, because I mean, you know, sometimes when we watch like Supergirl, some of their it feels a little you know, I don't know if you did that as best as you could, but Station 19 I think does a really good job, which is really cool, and I would definitely check it out. So the next thing that I want to talk about is a movie that I watched actually about, well, it was this summer. I can't remember what month it was released. Probably like June or July. I think it was July. It was called The Old Guard, and it's a Netflix original movie starring Charlize Theron, and it's based on a graphic novel, but it's about a group of warriors who are immortal until they're not. It's like they have like so many like chances at dying and coming back to life until one day they just don't. And so it's a really, really solid movie. It's definitely an action movie, you know, with all of the action movie tropes that you would absolutely expect. But it also has kind of that found family aspect, because this group of warriors has been together for so long, and they add a new member in the beginning of the movie. So it's a really interesting premise that the movie was based upon, and I really liked it. I thought it was really, just really enjoyable. It's a bit gory, you know, kind of typical action movie violence. There is a scene where they all get like plowed down by bullets, but obviously they're gonna like come back to life. So, but they're just like laying there with like bullet holes in their heads, and it's definitely interesting to look at. But it's good. It's a really good movie, and I thought it was just cool to watch that kind of in the summer when we weren't really having these big blockbuster movies. I almost wish that I could have seen it, you know, in a movie theater, because I think it was kind of that movie where, you know, I can think of a couple of like the action sequences from that movie where I would have loved to have seen it like on a big screen, but obviously in July we were not really going to the big screen, and Netflix doesn't have a habit of releasing their original movies in theaters anyway. So, but it's a really solid watch, and if you haven't seen it, Charlize Theron kicks ass in this movie. She's the star of the movie. But there's also LGBT representation in this movie, which is really cool to see from, like a big Netflix, blockbuster, like their big movie for July. So I thought that was really cool to see that in this film. I also think it dealt with like the storyline that it actually was like dealing with was really interesting, because obviously they're immortal, so people are gonna want to know what is up with them, in order to like get their powers or whatever. It was really good though. I thought it was a really fun action movie. Like if you like, I don't know, something like John Wick or any of those kind of like big loud action blow up stuff, shooting movies, this is definitely one to check out. And like I said, Charlize Theron is everything. She's everything to me. So another thing that I watched this year is Motherland Fort Salem. I watched this show in maybe like April, May. I kind of watched it at this, I think after I finished Station 19, I watched Motherland Fort Salem. This show is bananas, cuckoo, bonkers, crazy. It's crazy. Like the concept, the world building is kind of crazy. It's about a group of witches, and that is who is like the US Army. Like like all over the world, everybody's armies are made up of girl witches, like women witches, like, and specifically women, because the show like makes a point about that. And so the show follows these 3 witches who are new recruits in the army. Like they've been recruited to the army, and so it's their journey through what probably equates to like basic training. But it's really good. It's a really interesting show, because I think it by kind of reversing the gender roles in the show, it's a really interesting watch to see how they deal with that, how they deal with like elements of like feminism and like patriarchy and stuff like that. It's really interesting to see how that's handled. And the magic is really cool. It's kind of like Vampire Academy, where they like each that's a really obscure reference. But where they each like kind of declare a magic. Do you know what I mean? If you've ever seen Vampire Academy, you'll know what I mean. So like they have a thing that they like specialize in, and their 3 main girls are so interesting. I think that's one thing that I was really appreciative of this year is the amount of strong and interesting and complex and flawed female characters that we got, because I know that we all love like, oh, strong female characters, but I love complex and just effed up and like, just flawed women are so interesting, and they're so cool to watch. And especially with these 3 girls who are just young women, they're trying to figure out who they are, where they belong in the world, what is going on with the army, because there's this like general who you're definitely a little bit suspicious of throughout the show. Your opinion kind of changes of her. And so it's really interesting to watch as they deal with all of these things that are happening, and all of the the military industrial complex things that they talk about, and like the morality of militant things. It's a really interesting show, and it's done by Freeform, which you wouldn't think that Freeform shows are very hit or miss, but this one is very much a hit for me. It works really well, and also the main character, well, one of the main 3 girls, is queer, and she has a girlfriend in the show, and that's really cool too, because they're kind of like right at the forefront of the show, which I really appreciate, because a lot of the times, like I've talked about before, a lot of queer representation is all in the background, or you know, it's a side character or whatever, but both of those characters that are together are pretty much like very instrumental and very, very much necessary to the plot almost at all times. So it's really cool to see that, and I really appreciated that, and I think that they're a cool couple. I think their storyline is cool. And it's renewed for season 2, so it's gonna be coming back. I don't know when, you know, we don't know when, but probably I would guess next spring, maybe in the summer. I don't know what Freeform does for airing their shows, but you can actually watch it on Hulu right now. You can binge the whole entire season. I think it's only 10 episodes, so it's a pretty quick watch, which I really appreciated as well. Though one thing to be aware of, and actually the show does this as well, is they put like trigger warnings like in the beginning of each episode, and they put the suicide hotline at the end of each episode, because there's some like crazy scenes with the like bad guys of the show and their power and what they do to people and kind of their acts of terrorism that can definitely be triggering for some individuals. So I would definitely watch with caution if you're sensitive to kind of that kind of imagery, like suicidal imagery. Because it definitely is heavy for some episodes. Like the very first episode is kind of crazy. And I've never watched a show that was like, call if you need help. I mean, I've seen 13 Reasons Why, but like I was expecting that because I knew that story obviously was about that. But this one I was like, oh my God, what am I watching? But it's a really, really good show. I just think it's cool, and like I said, I just really appreciate the complex and nuanced female characters that are in the show. I think the actresses do really well. I've never heard of any of them before, so I think this might be their first big, you know, roles, and I think that they do such a good job, you know, as these newcomers, new faces. You know, I always appreciate that because, you know, I love when, you know, like, people get their chance and they get to show off their talent, because all of these girls are really, really talented. And I think it's another show that has a found family aspect to it, which like I said, I really love. And yeah, so I would definitely check it out if that sounds appealing to you at all. It's definitely, I don't know if I guess it's like fantasy. I don't know if it would be called, I don't think it's like sci-fi, but it's definitely, you know, kind of out there in terms of like concept and what they're tackling and what they're talking about. It's just a really interesting show with really cool performances and really cool characters. And yeah, I just really enjoy it. And if I were you, I would just go binge it. It's 10 episodes, like I said, and wait for the next season, because I'm really excited to see where the story goes from here. So I'm going to do something kind of blasphemous. I'm going to do 2 movies in a row next, because I want to end on a show that I'm absolutely obsessed with and I think everybody should watch. And I want that to be kind of like the last thing that I talk about. But the first movie that I do want to talk about before I get to that is Birds of Prey. And you might be thinking, oh my God, that came out this year? Yes, it did. It did. It came out in February of this year. It was the last movie that I saw in theaters before the entire world shut down. Obviously, like I said, I just saw Wonder Woman 1984 in the theaters, so that is the last movie that I saw in theaters. But this was the last one that I saw for a long time. And I saw it 4 times in the theater. I saw an early screening, which was great, and then I went with a friend once, and then I went with my sister once, and then I went by myself. Yeah. And that movie, listen, it gives me the same feeling of walking out of like the first Wonder Woman movie, you know, that feeling of like, oh my God, I can do anything. What I would do, and this is what I did when I went by myself, and listen, going to the movie theater by yourself might sound sad, but it's actually really great. The only thing that sucks is that you don't have anybody to talk about it with afterwards. But if you've already seen it and you've already talked to somebody about it, you just go alone to see it again. I left the movie theater, and this was when I was in Chicago for school, so I went to the AMC, the AMC River East. I love that place, and I went there by myself, and I took the bus, and then after the movie was over, walked out, felt incredible, put in my headphones, got on the bus, and listened to the Birds of Prey soundtrack, and just like the soundtrack just like immerses you in that movie and just like keeps you in that headspace. And so I just felt so cool, like all the way back to my apartment. It was insane. I love this movie. I think it's so funny. I think it's so bright and colorful. When I think about a comic book movie, I think about Birds of Prey because it just screams comic book, like cartoon, like everything about it is just so cool, and Kathy Yan does such an incredible job with each of her characters, with Harley, with Huntress, with Canary, with Renee, with Cassandra, even with Roman. I mean, he's kind of like a throwaway villain almost, but like you just hate him so much, and it's just so good. Like, I think it's a really cool movie and a really cool addition to the DCEU. The DCEU is obviously very hit or miss, but this movie is so good, and it's one of my favorites. I think my ranking of DCEU movies is, first of all, Wonder Woman, then Birds of Prey, then Aquaman, then Wonder Woman 1984, and then just the rest of them. They don't matter all that much. I don't like them all that much. But this film is just so cool, and I know that people had issues like with the structure, with how because there's a lot of like jumping around in this movie, and I understand that on a first watch it might be confusing because Harley takes you down different paths throughout the whole movie, and you're like, whoop, and she's like, whoop, rewind, and you're like, oh my god. But when you think about that character, it absolutely makes sense for her. And the thing is that Deadpool movies are kind of like that, you know, like narrated by this really goofy, off-the-wall, character. And I really appreciate that for this Harley Quinn movie because she is absolutely that kind of character that would try to tell you a story, but she would take you down 6 different paths first to get to the end. And it's really, really cool. And Margot Robbie is Harley Quinn. She is Harley Quinn. She's the definitive Harley Quinn. No one will ever be a better Harley Quinn than Margot Robbie. She's incredible. Journey as Black Canary is literally everything to me. I think that she is the perfect mixture of, like, because obviously people get mad at Arrow for what they did to Black Canary as a character, and which, fair. But I think that Journey's Black Canary is, like, the perfect mixture of, like, all of the Black Canaries from Arrow. Like, she has the, everything that was good about Sarah Lance as Black Canary, like how she was wanting to protect women and protect girls, kind of that storyline, because Black Canary has that storyline with Cassandra in this movie. And she has everything that Laurel was in her, like her heart and her desire to help people. And then you've also kind of got the Dinah Lance part of it, or Dinah Drake part of it, where you're like, oh, she's kind of a hard ass, she's kind of jaded, she's kind of cold. And all of that came together to make probably my favorite Black Canary that I've ever seen. She is Black Canary. She's just so good. And she's such a good actress. There's a moment in the movie, and I know I said I wasn't going to talk about spoilers, but this movie is from the beginning of the year, so I'm just going to say this. There's a moment in the film where you can, like, literally see her on screen, on your television, on your movie screen, turn into Black Canary. Like, you can see the moment that she goes from Dinah Lance to Black Canary, which is just so cool. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Huntress, Helena Bertinelli. Mary Elizabeth Winstead does such an incredible job. She's repressed, she's hilarious, she's intense, and she's funny because she doesn't think she's being funny. And she's just such a good character. I wish that they'd used a little bit more of her. I understand keeping the mystery until the end. I really appreciated that because I thought it was cool to kind of keep her very mysterious and then reveal at the end that she's kind of this like dork. But I really, really like this movie, and like I said, it's like peak comic book movie. Like the bright colors, the explosions, the way that Harley acts, the way that she, just like her dialogue, it's just so comic book. And you're like, yeah, this is what I want from all of my comic book movies from here on out. Like, forget about the gray, murky, Batman versus Superman. Like, give me more Birds of Prey. And I also really like the Gotham that Kathy Yan built. It's more, because, like people, Gotham is Chicago, but her Gotham is a little bit more New York because they did film in New York, but it also just feels a bit more like New York than Chicago. But it's interesting because it's, I've talked about this before. It's kind of like showing that side of Gotham that's like the disenfranchised side of Gotham. Like, because obviously in most cases we're shown Bruce Wayne's shiny image of Gotham, or just like the nastiest, scummiest parts of Gotham. This was like middle of the road Gotham, which I really appreciated. It made it more realistic. And the fight scenes in this movie are incredible. I already talked about the soundtrack, but it's amazing. I listen to it literally all the time. It's such a great, like, just getting ready to go somewhere soundtrack. I mean, it's awesome. So good. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. It's on HBO Max if you have HBO Max. And just check it out. It's awesome. Another thing that I watched, another movie that I watched, is The Prom. And I really like this movie. I've seen it. It came out, a couple weeks ago, I think. I can't remember what day it came out. It came out before Christmas. And I really like this movie. It's really good. And I know that everybody hates James Corden, but he's actually okay in it. Like, the thing is, this is the only real, like, spoilery thing that I'll talk about, is people really, really shat on James Corden about his offensive performance in this movie. And he is a straight man playing a flamboyant gay man. But the thing is that they couldn't have, like, they'd have to literally, because I think the thing was that they wanted a big name, so they got James Corden, which, fine. But, and so Ryan Murphy cast him as this flamboyant gay man, and the thing was that people were like, oh, well, if he hadn't played the character like that, then it wouldn't have been so bad. But the thing is that his character, like, that's his character. Like, he's flamboyant, he's gay, he's, in his songs, he, like, he says that Emma, who's the main character, the main lesbian character whose story this all revolves, he says that she can borrow all of his makeup and she can wear the Spanx that he's wearing and all of this stuff. And he calls himself Mrs. Cliffman at some points. Like, he's very much kind of that stereotype. And I think that James Corden was just kind of trying to stay true to that character. And I think that when you think about it in that space, then it works. Barely, but I think he's good. He does what he needs to do in that movie. His character is great. I just adore his character and how he interacts with Emma. Definitely the highlight of the movie for me is Nicole Kidman. She's great. She's such a great singer and performer and dancer, and her character is really, really awesome. Angie is such a fun character to watch, and she's so sweet, and she just has so much heart. And then Meryl Streep is incredible as Dee Dee Allen, and Keegan-Michael Key is really, really great as his role as the principal. I really like all of the kind of supporting characters around, well, and they're not even really supporting characters, they're all kind of main characters because their stories all kind of intertwine. all of the characters around Emma and Alyssa. Oh, and also I love Trent. He sings the song Love Thy Neighbor, and that song is so good. I can't stop listening to this soundtrack. And speaking of Emma and Alyssa, I really like them. I think that their story is really interesting. It is another closeted story. I think people might get mad about another closeted story, but it's fine. I think it's great. The thing is that it's so good, and also it's so very realistic. It takes place in Indiana. It takes place in a fictional city in Indiana called Edgewater. But everybody kind of put the piece together, and they're like, yeah, that's Muncie. It's Muncie. Muncie, Indiana, people would act like that. But people act like that all over in Indiana. Like the first line of Emma's like first solo song is called Just Breathe. And she's like, note to self, don't be gay in Indiana. And that is absolutely true. And I don't know, I think the movie just works. And it's another one of those cases, kind of like Happiest Season, where I think we're seeing, not the, we're seeing kind of like, even though this movie is very much not based in reality, it feels like the reality that we all kind of face. And especially, I mean, I live in Indiana. I be here. I am here. I know what it's like here. It's true. All the things that they say are true, and all the experiences that Emma has are absolutely would happen. And it's because it's based on a true story. And it's like, come on. Like, I'm glad that we had this story. I think it's really cool, and I'm glad that this movie came out, and I think it's a really fun watch if you just want to watch a musical that's gay, that has some really good songs in it, and it's not the best movie in the whole world by any means. Like, it's not winning any Oscars, but it's just cool. And the two lead actresses who play Emma and Alyssa, both of them are queer as well, which is something that's really, really cool. And they've started this like foundation that helps to like benefit the Trevor Project. I think you could find more information on their Instagrams. Ariana DeBose, I think DeBose is how you say her last name, and Joanne Pellman. They've got some really cool stuff that they're doing, and I'm really glad that they were given this opportunity to like shine in these roles. I don't know, I really enjoy the movie. I think it's fun. Oh, I forgot to mention it's a Netflix original, so it's on Netflix if you want to watch it. So good, so incredible. It's just good. And I like how whimsical it is. It feels like a Broadway musical. I mean, because, some musicals, like Grease, when you think about Grease, you're like, yeah, this is just like a movie musical. Like, but this musical feels like Broadway. Like, it feels like Broadway. I don't know. I just really, really liked it. And I know that a lot of people didn't like it, but I think it's absolutely worth a watch, and it's worth a chance, and it's worth, just seeing what it's about. And if you like it, then great. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. But I really enjoy it, and I've watched it so many times. I think yesterday I watched it for the 4th time, but it only came out 2 weeks ago, so I just keep watching it. I mean, the thing that's nice about it is, it's like a movie that you don't have to think about, and it's interesting how, but it's also got so much heart, and it's got some really good messages that kind of go on throughout the film, which I appreciate. So the last thing that I want to talk about is a show that I absolutely adore. I'm totally obsessed with, and I think everyone should watch this show. It's called The Wilds. It's on Amazon Prime. It is a new show that came out a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't know. It came out I think around the same time as The Prom did. And this show is so good. Oh my god. It's so good. It's in this is the show that I was talking about. I don't want to spoil literally anything, so I'm not going to talk. I'm going to talk in very broad strokes, because I want everybody to go watch it without knowing anything about it, because it's the twists and the turns in this show are so worth it if you don't know what's going on, you know? Like, it's so fun to watch it all unfold without knowing any spoilers. I know that sometimes if you watch a show and you know things, it doesn't ruin the experience, and I don't think knowing stuff about the Wilds would ruin the experience in any way, but it's just so fun to be clueless while you're watching this show. So it's about a group of girls who so they kind of like all know each other just like in pairs. So everybody knows someone at least. So it's a group of girls and they're going to they're going to an island retreat in Hawaii. It's supposed to be some kind of like feminist retreat to build, I don't know, skills as a person, and like kind of like therapy and rejuvenation, whatever. So they're on a plane to this Hawaiian getaway, and their plane goes down and they crash on an island in the middle of the ocean, and they're stranded there. It is such a phenomenal show. I don't really want to say much more specifics than that, but it is so good because, you know, it's kind of like Lost, where, you know, you have the dynamics of people on the island and people trying to survive, and there are 8 girls. Well, there are 9 girls. Anyway, there are 8/9 girls, and they all go, you know, the show goes through every single one of their backstories, goes through every single one of their struggles. Each girl has an episode dedicated to them. And as the series unfolds through various timelines of flashbacks, flash forwards, presents, you know, present storylines, it's really interesting to watch it all unfold. It's 10 episodes long, so it's not a long binge at all. It's really, really good. And it's already been renewed for season 2, so I would absolutely check it out. If you have Amazon Prime, Prime Video is included with your Amazon Prime subscription. Absolutely give it a watch because it is so good. And this is another show where it's like complex, incredible female characters who are all so flawed and so just nuanced and interesting and well-rounded. And there's not a single weak character on this show. There's not a single weak link of this group of characters. And all of the episodes are incredibly well written. It's just such good TV. You know, it's like the kind of TV that you just like long to see. You know, it's so good. It's incredible. And it deals with so many concepts that I think are really interesting, and the morality of the show itself is really interesting. It gives you so much to think about, so much to talk about, so much to unpack. And I really, really like the show. And also the cast is incredible. Incredible cast. They're all not necessarily newcomers. Some of them are, but they're, you know, I think that for a couple of these girls, this is like their first major role. And so they're really, really, really talented, really like showing the world who they are, which is really cool. And I really appreciate that because, like I said, I love when new talent gets to like come onto the scene and show themselves off and do really good work in a really good show. And I think that they did that in this show. And there's also LGBT representation in this show, which is incredible. The storylines for both of those characters are so good and so incredible, and the actresses who play them are so respectful and so wonderful. And there's actually a couple of like queer actresses in the cast as well, which is really, really cool. Honestly, I mean, out of everything that I have said to watch in this time that I've been talking, I would watch this one first. Just watch it. It's so good. And I mean it. Go watch it. Don't look up anything. Don't, you know, just go watch it. Go in blind and just enjoy it because it is so good. It's so interesting. It's so fun. And the thing is the thing that's really cool is that the fandom as well is really fun. The actresses they're around my age. I'm 21, and so I think most of them are kind of like, you know, early to mid 20s, and so that's really cool. They all understand like memes, and and a couple of them have like TikTok accounts where I've seen Shannon Barry, who plays Dot. She's like made memes about the Wilds on TikTok, like on her own TikTok account, which is just really fun. And it's just cool to see, kind of see people who like understand like stan culture be on the receiving end of stan culture. And so I think that they're a really, really awesome group of people. You might actually recognize Sophia Ali from Faking It. She played Amy's girlfriend in the last season of the show. So you might recognize her from there. Actually, and then there's another actress, Sarah Pigeon, who is good friends with Victoria Pedretti, who's from You and Bly Manor and Hill House. And she was promoting the show back on her Instagram story when it first came out, which was really cool and really nice of her. I guess they went to college together. I don't know. But this show, like I said, it gives you a lot to think about. There's no bad characters. There's not a single bad episode. There's not an episode wasted. There's, like I said, it's just female characters who are complex and well-rounded and really cool. And the story is awesome, and I cannot wait for the second season. It was renewed like a couple of days, or maybe like at least a week maybe, after it first came out. So Prime did us all a favor and didn't leave us hanging for so long, you know, and I really appreciate that. So definitely check out The Wilds on Amazon Prime. Yeah, so that's all I've got for today. I do want to mention though really quick that Season 2 of Dickinson, which is an Apple TV Plus show, will be coming out very soon. They're going to be releasing the first 3 episodes all at once, and then they're going to be releasing 1 episode every single week. So like I did for Dickinson Season 1, I'm just going to wait until all of the episodes come out, and then I'm going to talk about the season as a whole. I'm so excited for the show to come back. I love that show. If you know anything about me, you know that I love Dickinson. I'm obsessed with the show. It was one of my favorite shows of 2019. If you haven't seen Season 1, go check it out. If you have seen Season 1 and you haven't listened to my episode about Dickinson, go check it out, because I did a whole like hour-long episode just talking about Season 1 of Dickinson and then what I wanted to see for Season 2. And yeah, and then Batwoman will be coming back soon. A lot of shows like Nancy Drew's coming back. I'm really excited about that. Riverdale is coming back. I'm excited. It's cool because it kind of feels like the TV season is starting back up again, and I'm really excited about it. And then, oh shoot, yeah, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is also coming out actually this week on Friday. The final season of Chilling Adventures of Sabrina will be coming out. So if you're into that, check that out too. I know I will be. I hope it's good. I'm really sad that it's the last season of it. I really like that show, and I wish that they had gotten the opportunity to do more. Hopefully it ends like in a good way, you know, like in a satisfying way, because I think that they just had to stop making it. Like I don't think that they got to choose that it was going to be their last season, so I hope it's good. But yeah, that's all I've got for today. I hope you enjoyed me just kind of like rambling about shows that I really like. I've missed doing that. I mean, I know that I like the scripted episodes, and I know that you do as well, but I also just like to ramble and say, you know, a bunch of times. I'm sorry about that. I can't stop it. So yeah, that's all I've got. So do all the things, you know, like, subscribe, share, rate, whatever. Do all of that. You can hit me up on Twitter at TelevisedPod. Tell me what you think. Leave a comment below. I would love to hear if you have seen any of these shows, or if you go check them out, come back and tell me what you think, because I would love to hear what you think about any of these things that I've talked about today. And yeah, so I will see you guys for my Wonder Woman 1984 video at some point. I'll tweet when it's gonna go out, but yeah, so I'll see you guys next time. Bye.